Welcome back, everybody. Today we will be discussing the SB Dunk Street Hawker, also known as the SB Dunk Low Chinese New Year. Specifically, we'll be discussing whether you should sell or hold the SB Dunk Street Hawker and why that is. To preface this, if you guys enjoy these types of videos regarding the market, reselling, and even how to acquire these limited products, be sure to subscribe and enable post notifications just so you stay 100% updated on all of these things. Furthermore, for more urgent updates like shock drops, or raffles, or Sitelists, etc., follow my Twitter, KeithAdam10, and also personals for you. This way, you're always in the loop 24/7 whenever there is a restock, drop, etc. For those who don't know, the SB Dunk Street Hawker drops on January 22nd for $110. If you so happen to be watching this before the drop occurs, make sure to watch my How to Cop guide regarding these as well. In order to determine if the SB Dunk Street Hawker will be a fruitful hold, we will cover an estimated range of what the sneaker will settle at after the drop, and also when shipments come in, essentially the pairs going into circulation, whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time, and finally, what type of margin are we looking at in terms of holding. Not the retail to resell initial margin, but rather the hold margin over X period of time. Essentially, are these worth your time? Kicking it off, let's discuss the estimated range that these should be settling at. To begin with, stock on these is very low with under 20,000 pairs. There's an absolutely absurd amount of demand for these as well, in combination with that low stock, which is just incredible. With the very high demand currently and low stock, you should certainly expect these to be very profitable with an incredible margin. Now, regarding a specific range for them, it's playing out to look extremely similar to the SB Dunk Low Sean Cliver release that we discussed not too long ago. That is, in terms of stock, demand, and even on a distribution level. They're both very limited and received by the majority of the same skate shops, with most of stock being on Nike sneakers. With that said, we'll be using the Sean Cliver today as a base model for how I expect these to play out. Normally, we discuss an average rate of decrease if we're 2 days out from the drop, but these, just like the Sean Clivers, are so limited that the small amount of sales don't really dictate a consistent linear decrease. In fact, the Sean Clivers barely went down at all moving up to the release date within those last couple of days, right up to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Therefore, up to 10 a.m. Eastern Time for these, the Street Hawkers, I'd expect these to remain around the same from what you're seeing right on the screen right now. Perhaps just a little closer to the lower end of the average, not too different. So currently, if we take the lower end of that average, they might end up sitting around $675 before the drop. Now, let's discuss what will occur after the drops take place. That is when we will experience what I like to refer to as the impulsivity effect. Sneaker drops specifically impact human impulsiveness significantly after an individual fails to acquire that desired product due to insufficient supply and too much demand. Therefore, on average, we normally see about a 10% increase of the pre-drop prices post-drop. This isn't always the case, but majority of the time it is, and it should be the case on these as well, especially because that's nearly exactly what happened on the Sean Clivers and how they reacted. Assuming a 10% increase, sizes should sit around $740 to $745, just like the Sean Clivers. Some sizes will be a little higher than that, while other sizes will be a little bit lower than that. Keep this number in mind because we'll be revisiting this number when discussing when the most optimal times to sell at are for your time. Now let's discuss what prices will look like once shipments go out in the 1 to 2 week range. During this period, the vast majority of pairs will be going into circulation. Considering the stock is very low on these, I don't think we'll see a drastic effect here. In fact, I even admit that I overestimated the amount that they would be decreasing for the Sean Cliver SB release. It didn't end up affecting the final prediction anyway, whether to sell or hold, but I'm illustrating the point that we shouldn't expect these to decrease by a significant amount when the pairs actually do go into circulation. We normally can see upwards of a 15% decrease, but on the Clivers, it seems it was towards the lower end for most sizes, so only about 10%, which did not even last very long at all, which we'll discuss soon as well. They recovered from this drop very quickly. So then dropping by 10% from this point, it would leave us around where we started pre-drop. So essentially what you're seeing on StockX right now, if you're watching the video before the drop takes place. What was pretty unique on the Clivers was how quickly they recovered and went right back to the range that we initially experienced right after the drop during that impulsivity effect. And now, about a month later, just even slightly higher than that as well. So despite that drop when pairs did go into circulation, they actually ended up recovering relatively quickly. Therefore, I am expecting a very similar quick recovery for these after that temporary dip in value. Now, with the average price ranges at those points in time evident, let's discuss whether they're expected to increase post-drop or even hypothetically decrease, along with how much specifically over specific periods of time. I already mentioned that I do believe these will make an initial swift recovery from that temporary dip, very similar to the Cliver SB, but now let's discuss the actual long-term effects of these. Over the last 2 years, SB Dunks have proven to be very fruitful holds, prime example of which being the Strange Loves. On the contrary though, we also have seen other not so great ones, such as the Ben & Jerry Dunks, which essentially haven't moved at all, making them a fruitless hold. In fact, they even went down a little bit. However, keep in mind how much these Ben & Jerry's were going for initially. It was an absurd amount. These, on the other hand, similar to the Sean Cliver, these street hawkers, seem to be settling in around a decent, relatively reasonable range due to the very low stock and high demand for these, essentially even less than half of what the Ben & Jerry's went for initially. Therefore, I think it's quite unlikely that we would see a decay in price for these, similar to the Clivers. I do expect these to increase over time. However, is the amount that they're expecting to increase by actually going to be worth your time for the amount that these will be going for right after the drop anyway? This leads us to the next section. Are these worth your time, despite the fact that I do believe they still will increase in value? Now, regarding the hold margin on these, essentially the price you could have gotten versus the price in say 12 to 14 months, it's really not that great. Unfortunately, despite the fact that I do believe these will increase, the amount that they're currently going for right now does not justify waiting to sell in my opinion. Because, just as we always discuss, you must consider how the increase looks in proportion to its initial value. If these hypothetically increase to $900, that's fantastic. That may seem like a huge increase because it's well over a $100 increase, but you could have gotten just around $150 shy of that if you had sold right away and put your money into more fruitful holds that could have potentially doubled over the course of 12 to 14 months. The main issue for these is simply the fact that the market seems to have priced in the long-term value for these already for the most part. So again, I do expect them to still increase. I just feel that there are better holds out there that will increase more proportionally. If these were to double, they would have to get into the range of $1,300 to $1,400, which I think is a long shot. I can see these increasing to at best perhaps the upper 900 range to even perhaps 1,000, which makes these a somewhat relatively decent hold if you have nothing else to hold and if you don't mind being out of the capital. But if you're looking for the best holds marginally, you could also feel free to check out the sneakers that I discuss in this video. These often do more than double in retail, and there are a lot of these opportunities available right now. In fact, I actually just recently discussed one of these opportunities not too long ago. So personally, I'm going to quick sell these, assuming we do see some sort of a good impulsivity effect post-drop. Now, if they so happen to plummet, on the other hand, in the case where they don't end up like the Clivers, then it might actually be worth holding if they could get down to the mid 500 range. If they do somehow get that low and you haven't sold, it may be worth your time to hold, because it would leave much more room to increase, of course, compared to now, where, again, I was expecting them to react somewhat similar to the Clivers, which could be upwards in that 700 and change range. Remember, if you do plan to quick sell, you must ship within 2 business days for StockX and Go, so try to pick the fastest shipping date for Nike. Next day shipping is only $15, or 2-day is $5. I always choose 2-day on my manual accounts when I do plan to quick sell, or you could also list on eBay with 30-day handle. Just a quick note that I always mention to people who do intend on holding with low capital: you should never hold anything if you don't have sufficient capital to go for as many drops as possible at your full potential and not holding back. If you need money to go for all drops, sell them right after the drop during the impulsivity effect, before even more go into circulation. Again, I'll personally be quick selling these, assuming we do see some sort of an increase after the drop rather than a plummet, and it's not because I think these will go down. In fact, I do believe these will be increasing over time. I just think that there are going to be better holds out there in comparison to these, considering these are already going for such a significant amount. Value of these, for example, is worth the price of like 5 to 6 pairs of the band mid-grade school pairs, so hopefully you can see my point there. Anyway, that'll conclude it for today. Feel free to leave a like if you enjoyed, or you perhaps learned a thing or two. Subscribe and enable post notifications to stay 100% updated on all hyped releases. Also, feel free to check out the links in the description below for reliable, fast, residential proxies and pre-verified Nike sneakers accounts. Last but not least, make sure to follow KeithAdam10 and Personals for You so you guys stay updated on all urgent info like I was discussing today. With that though, I'll see you guys later. Have a fantastic rest of your day and good luck on this drop. We're all gonna need it, to say the least.
it put, get your foot on my foot.